What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Shop Talk. I'm Noah. We are at DNS Bait Tackle and Fly Shop here on the north side of Madison, and we are going to be talking about different ice reel configurations, right? So in the world of ice fishing, there's constant innovation, right? Everybody's trying to build a better mousetrap, and reels are no exception to that. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the three most popular styles of ice fishing reels and kind of the pros and cons of each one, and which ones I like to use. And frankly, I use all of them, but I have kind of more specific uses for each one. So we're going to be talking about the old school, like the Schooly reels, right? Basically the fewest moving parts possible, the cheapest option for a reel. We're going to be talking about spinning reels. Pretty much everyone uses spinning reels, right? And we're going to be talking about inline reels. These have been really popular over the last like 5 or 6 years. They've been around for a long time, but they've gained a lot of attraction over the last few years. So we're going to talk about each of these, the pros and cons, and this is really geared more for people who are maybe new to ice fishing or somebody who's maybe on the fence about trying something new, especially these inline reels. I know there's a lot of people who are out there that are kind of like, I don't know if I want to spend the money on that when I know my spinning reel works or I know my Schooly reel works. So we're going to talk about that today. So let's dive in. Let's learn a little bit about reels. And guys, if you are in the market for any of this equipment, stop on down to DNS. Pat's got a wide selection of all kinds of stuff, even custom handmade rods. These things are freaking cool. So Kevin down here, sometimes you'll see him usually on weekends, right, Pat? He's usually
weekdays.
Down here. Weekdays. Yep, if you see Kevin, ask him about his rods. He makes some incredible rods. Everything from panfish to walleye, whitefish, lake trout, and even open water stuff too. So check these out. So let's dive in. Let's start talking about some reels. All right, guys. So the first reel we're going to talk about is probably the most simple, and I would say most people at some point in their ice fishing career, if you will, have owned one of these, and that is the Schooly style of reel. Now, to be clear, there is a specific reel known as a Schooly reel, but I'm just using that as kind of a blanket statement for this style of ice reel. So if we take a look at this thing, you can see that it's incredibly simple. There's the fewest moving parts on any style of reel. Essentially, you have basically a little reel foot here that attaches to your rod, either to your handle or the blank, wherever. The spool and a nut holding it on there. And if you have a real fancy one, you can see there's a little spring on here. That's your drag, if you will, and this is a fancy one. A lot of them don't even have that. It's just a crappy little washer and a nut on there. But really, all you need this to do is hold line. In a lot of cases, we use these on lines where we're not doing a lot of reeling. So we're fishing in shallower water, or in this case, we're long rodding it. Look at the size of this thing. This is a 49-inch rod, and for those of you maybe new to ice fishing, you know, you might be wondering, why do you want a 49-inch rod, right? The reason is ice fishermen are lazy, right? So if you're hole hopping, let's say we're bluegill fishing over on Monona Bay, right? If you see people out there hole hopping around, a lot of guys are running these big rods because all you have to do is stand here. Look at that. I don't even have to bend down. I don't have to sit. I can just walk up to the hole, put the rod tip right next to the hole. I got a spring bobber built on there. Boom, boom, boom. And if you're only fishing in a few feet of water, you lift it up and bam, look. I mean, how long is this? We'll call it 50 inches. I'm just shy of 6 foot. If I lift this thing over my head, you've probably got what, like a solid 12 feet of line hanging off of this thing. That's the beauty of it. You don't need to use the reel. This is only here to hold the line. So if you're hole hopping and fishing in shallow water, this is the way to go, guys. You don't have to twist your line up using your reel. You just set the amount of line you want out and go fish, and when you catch a fish, lift it up, unhook your fish, drop back down. So that being said, these are incredibly simple reels. Now, yes, this one has the little spring on there for drag, but just as a word of caution, the drag on these sucks, and some of them don't even have drag. So realistically, this is more or less just a line holder. It's not something that you necessarily crank on, not to mention, it's pretty tiny, right? So your revolutions on this thing, the amount of line you're picking up is so minimal, it'd be hard to keep up with a fish while you're fighting it. So this is more of a set it and forget it kind of a reel, right? You pull out the amount of line you need, fish with it, and when you're done, crank the line back on. But super simple, very affordable, and probably the easiest way to get started in ice fishing, especially with panfish. And another thing I'll add, Kevin's Custom Rods has a full lineup of rods here. He's got really nice panfish noodle rods, walleye rods, lake trout rods, and obviously the long rods too. Lots of different colors, lots of different combinations. They're pretty stinking cool, and this is actually really cool, and I was just looking at this earlier. Check this out. See this little piece of wire here? I was looking at this and I'm like, what the heck is that? And Pat informed me that this is actually for threading your line through your spring bobber. How many of you struggle with getting line through your spring bobber? I know I do, and I usually take a heavy piece of fluorocarbon and try to double it up and fish it through, and it sucks. It's a pain. Kevin's got you covered. Little piece of wire there makes life so much easier getting your line threaded through that slip or spring bobber, slip bobber. See, I'm already thinking summer, guys, but there you go. So that's kind of the quick and dirty on this. So the advantage is it's very simple, very few moving parts. It's not going to freeze up on you, and very, very inexpensive. The downside is it's not something you're actually going to actively reel with. You're not going to fight fish with this reel. It's just here to hold the line. So there you go, guys. That's a quick rundown on Schooly Reels. I love them. I use them on my tip downs, and I also use them on long rods for hole hopping for panfish. Great option, especially if you're new to ice fishing. All right, guys, so we touched base on the Schooly Reel. Now let's go to the spinning reel, right? Everybody knows about spinning reels. Everybody has spinning reels. And to be clear, I just picked out random reels off the shelf here. I didn't pick any one in particular. But anyway, besides the point. So spinning reels, right? Most people use a spinning reel. They're obviously super easy to use. And of the options we have in front of us, these probably have the most moving parts, right? You got the bail, you got your drag, you got the spool, you got the handle, anti-reverse, the back reel, all that stuff. And spinning reels are great. In a lot of cases where you're fighting bigger fish, so pike, walleye, bass, things like that, a spinning reel is a fantastic option. Now, what I would say is probably the biggest downfall of a spinning reel is line twist, and that happens whether you're ice fishing or fishing open water, right? And some lines are certainly more susceptible to line twist than others. And I would say mono is probably the worst of all of them. And we use a lot of monofilament ice fishing, right? It doesn't freeze up as easily as braid does, or fluorocarbon. You know, fluoro gets kind of stiff sometimes. So we use a lot of monofilament, especially if you're pan fishing and you're using 2, 3, 4 pound monofilament. That stuff gets twisted up pretty quick and easy. So if you're fighting a fish and you know your drag is too light, you're gonna get a lot of line twist. So just so you guys know, a little PSA, and this goes for any application of a spinning reel. If you're reeling and all you hear is your drag going, all you're doing, you're not gaining any line, all you're doing is twisting your line. So stop reeling. Either stop reeling or tighten your drag a little bit so you're actually gaining line. So if you're just sitting there cranking and it's zzz, stop doing that. All you're doing is twisting your line. Now, one of the upsides is typically spinning reels pick up line very quickly. So if you're fighting fish that you need to gain a lot of line on in a hurry, especially like trout fishing, like Great Lakes trout, or even you know, up at Devil's Lake, just north of Madison here, spinning reels are a great option because they help you pick up line very quick. However, again, line twist becomes an issue. And again, the most moving parts, right? We're talking about, you know, fishing in the cold. Mechanical things, typically with more parts, break more easily. There's a greater chance for things to freeze up and fail. Now that being said, I will say that ice reels, specifically ice spinning reels, have come such a long way in engineering that the tolerances are such that in really cold temperatures, your gears aren't slipping, things aren't falling apart, things are working the way they're supposed to, especially anti-reverse. There's some reels that have a hard time with anti-reverse in the cold. A lot of these companies, a lot of these manufacturers have that stuff totally nailed down. These have come a long, long way. So if you want something with very adjustable drag, something that picks up line quickly, or something you could possibly even use for open water, maybe this would be a useful panfish reel on an ultralight, spinning reel is a good option. But that being said, line twist is an issue. So just something to keep in the back of your head here. But really, that to me is pretty much the only downfall with a spinning reel in an ice fishing application is line twist. And if it becomes a bigger issue, use a swivel. Add a swivel to it. Now, in some of your more finesse panfish presentations, a swivel might not be the best option, right? You know, it does seem to, at least with very light jigs, it kind of takes away some of the sensitivity. Wow, words are hard. It takes away from some of the sensitivity of feeling your jig because you have another thing in line that has some mass. It's made out of metal, and it can throw a few hiccups in your presentation. So anyway, long story short, if you're fishing for bigger fish, I really like spinning reels. If you have line twist, use a swivel, but that's pretty much the only downside to this style of reel. All right, guys, so option number 3 is one that, like I said before, has become far more popular the last few years, and that's the inline ice reel. And you're looking at this and going, oh, it's a fly reel, right? I could just use a fly reel. And you certainly could use a fly reel. The difference here is there is an anti-reverse system built into these, unlike a fly reel. So meaning that you can crank it forward, but you can't crank it backwards, right? Like you can with a fly reel. The reason these have become so popular, at least in my opinion, is the lack of line twist. So the way that this works, unlike a spinning reel where it has a rotor that spins around the front of the reel, this one just winds straight forward, and when you release the spool, it flies straight backwards. So you get basically no line twist. The only line twist you're getting on this is from your lure. And if you remember back a couple videos ago, we did the swivel or no swivel video using basically more popular jigging baits, bigger stuff, more like walleye size stuff, spoons, jig and wrap, stuff like that. When you're using baits like those, yes, you're gonna get some line twist, but that's why you use a swivel, right? And if you're one of those non-swivel users, go back and watch that video. I will have it linked in the description below. Go check that one out. But the beautiful part about this is it's perfect for using super finesse jigs. So for your panfish stuff, if you're using little itty bitty jigs and you're using light line, you know, 2-3 pound mono, this reel will not twist your line, which is perfect for super finesse presentations. They do pick up line very quickly. And another thing that's really nice, especially over a spinning reel, is they all have a star drag right here on the handle. So as you're fighting fish, you can one-handed adjust your drag. I can lighten it up or I can tighten it down just using my thumb and my pointer finger while I'm fighting a fish, versus a spinning reel where, you know, the line's going out, the rotor's spinning, and I have to try and reach in front of it and twist this little tiny knob. On these inline reels, it's super convenient. It's right there, one-hand operation. Fight the fish with one hand, adjust the drag with the other. Super cool. The one downside to these reels, guys, is that you know, the spool is very, very exposed. So if you're fishing outside and below freezing temperatures and you do not have a shack, you don't have a heater, right? You're just sitting outside, maybe you're sitting on a bucket, and you set this thing down next to the hole and you get it wet, there's a very good chance that you're going to freeze this spool up. There's very little clearance between the spool and the frame of this reel, and pretty much all of them are the same way. So if you set this thing down in the slush and get it wet, they do ice up, and it's kind of a pain to pick all the ice off and get this thing running smooth again. So that is really the biggest downside to this reel, is if you're outside, you're not in a shack, you're fishing in below freezing temperatures, and you get this thing wet or slushy, setting it down next to the hole, they do freeze up. That part sucks, but really that's the only disadvantage to this style of reel. I've caught everything from obviously panfish all the way to whitefish and walleyes with these things on Lake Michigan, and they work great. You know, they have really nice smooth drag systems. Again, all this ice fishing stuff has come so far in the last handful of years. They're really very well engineered. A lot of these even come with a clicker. So if you wanted to use this on a finicky fooler, for example, or, you know, just as a dead stick and you want some kind of a bite alarm, you can do that. You can have your clicker on and you can do that, which is pretty stinking cool. So that's pretty much it, guys. So you know, we covered the whole gamut of reels here, from the most simple, the least expensive, the fewest moving parts, to probably the most expensive with the most moving parts, and one that's kind of right in between. So for me, if I was going to pick just one of these, personally, as far as the most bang for your buck, the most versatile reel out of all of these, I'm probably going spinning reel, purely because I can use this for bigger fish and I can use it for small fish too. I just have to fish accordingly, right? I might have to add a swivel in there to keep my line twist down, but for overall usability, I'm going spinning reel. For value, I'm going with the Schooly, especially if I'm fishing shallow water. And if I want to step up my panfish game big time and get super, super finesse, eliminate all my line twist altogether, I'm going inline. So I know there's a lot of info there, guys. We dumped a whole bunch on you, but hopefully this helped kind of clarify, I'm making up words. Hopefully this helped clarify at least what's going on with these different reels. I know if you're new to ice fishing, you walk into a shop like this and go, holy crap, what do I need? Why does this look so different from this? Why is this one so inexpensive? And why is that rod so long? Hopefully that cleared some of that up, guys. Hopefully you guys are taking advantage of some of this cold weather here this winter. I know ice conditions have been weird all over the Midwest, but hopefully you guys have found some time and some safe ice to go out and have some fun. And if you haven't yet, get into DNS, get rigged up. Pat, Harley, Kevin, anybody here can help you get set up with the perfect rod and reel combo for what you're after. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you on the next episode. Shout out.